So our friends over at the Conscious Leadership Group, they talk about above and below the line leadership. Above is when we are open, curious, and committed to learning. Below the line is closed, defensive, and committed to being right. I'd even expand just to say that above the line is when we are living in alignment with our values, where we are the person that we want to be. Below is when we are living out of alignment. We're not the person that we want to be. Now, what brings us below the line? Well, in coaching, the common one is the pressure to win. Like in business, it's the pressure to be profitable. Sadly, sports have become such a business that I think head coaches, particularly the ones at the Division I level in the States, they feel the pressure to win and raise money now to pay for their players. So there's kind of like both of those things going on. So without a doubt, though, the pressure is heavy. And yet what I think is one of the heaviest things in coaching, one of the heaviest things in leadership, is the weight of caring for our athletes. Like I've been fortunate to work with so many coaches over the years, and they have struggled with the pressure to win. They've also struggled with this weight of caring. And because they care so much, they struggle to have hard conversations. They struggle to hold athletes accountable. And they struggle to occasionally remove players from their team that are hurting the team culture. But their deep care isn't the only aspect that makes accountability and hard conversations difficult. It's ego. It's the fact that we want the approval of our athletes. We want to be liked. We want to be thought of as a good coach. The challenge of accountability, the challenge in embracing conflict, it's something that we touch on in today's episode, and we touched on last episode with Angel Elderkin. And it's complex, but it's something we're going to dive deeper into in today's episode and hopefully give you some clarity and some action steps that you can take in this area. Now, if you haven't had a chance, please check back and listen to part 1 with Angel. She's an incredible coach, formerly the head women's basketball coach at App State, and now an executive coach, coaching coaches, coaching leaders. And I encourage you to reach out to her, to schedule a discovery call with her if you're interested in one-on-one coaching, or just follow her on Substack. Welcome to the Coaching Culture Podcast. My name is JP Nurbin, and I'm joined today by my co-host, Betsy Butterick. The mission of this podcast is to help you to grow in your leadership and to build a better team culture. If you want to learn more about TOC Culture and what we do for coaches, you can head on over to tocculture.com, learn about our platform there, TOC Coach, with our online courses, our community, and our webinars and coaching that we offer through the platform. Also, you can subscribe to the weekly newsletter there at tocculture.com.
That transitory space, your background, perfect for supporting those that you're working with. And not to say, because I think this is important to clarify, in the work that you do, and correct me if I'm wrong here, but I'm going to go out on a limb and say, Angel, your job is not to tell other people how to coach or tell them what you would do if you were in their shoes. Your goal and purpose professionally now is to help people uncover more of who they are as a coach and get into closer alignment with what they want to do, the impact that they want to have as a coach. Is that fair to say?
Correct. Yes.
Okay, excellent. I don't want to assume, so I want to check first. From that shared understanding, what I would love to ask is, what is a common issue without, breaching client confidentiality? What's a common issue that you experience in your role now supporting coaches? What comes up frequently in the conversations that you're having with the coaches that you work with or support?
Yeah, that's a good question. One overarching theme that's huge is time. They don't really seem to know how to manage time well, and find the time for themselves. And so that's one. But I think the bigger thing always that continues to come up is how to hold the standard within their team and how to have those conversations. And sometimes, and then in the work together, in asking the question, it's uncovered that the standard was never defined. And so it's really peeling back layers of like, man, I'm really having a problem with this player. Should I just ignore it and keep going? And it's like, well, what do you want to do? Of course they don't want to ignore it, but they say it. And then it's like, you don't want to. And the best question is like, so if you had a magic wand, what would you want this to look like? This is what I want it to look like. What's holding you back from doing it? And then sometimes the big topic or little topic is holding the standard, but underneath it, the big topic is the story that they're telling themselves about about the standard. And that has come up so much in just trying to distill that down. And I think getting back to what you said, a lot of people get on the call and say, well, what would you do in that moment? And there goes the pizza again. Not about me in the moment. I'm not here to fix it. I'm not here to fix it. And that's why I'm smiling so deeply, because I'm so passionate about the work I do, because I truly believe in it, that our coaches know what they're doing. It's the calm, clarity, space that they need to unpack it, to then step forward and make the right choice around it.
And that's so much of your experience though too, right? I mean, like when we talk about holding the standard, it's like people ask me, well, I said, well, it's on page 208 to 238 of the culture system. I tell you exactly what I would theoretically I would do as my best self as a coach, right? It's not what I do all the time. But you know, like it's the block isn't always the knowledge, the tools, the information. There's something in the perspective that's blocking. And so what are maybe some of those common blocks that you see in coaches that, let's just go to enforcing the standard? It could be many things, but we'll focus on enforcing the standard. What are the common blocks maybe in yourself that you saw as well as for other people?
Not wanting to lose the locker room. That's a big one, because sometimes and myself, I was guilty of this too, of if I do this with player X, what's the team going to think? What's the team going to feel? And then the story that they're telling themselves is like, they're going to think I'm a jerk if I do this, if I do that. When in reality, the players already know. That's the joke on all of us as coaches, is like, they know almost like what you're supposed to do, and they're almost mad that you don't do it, but you tell yourself a different story. And then that's what gets in your way, is the story that you tell yourself and what you believe to be true, when sometimes it's not. It's like, it's that, we all got fear and ego, and we're protecting ourselves instead of having these hard conversations. And what's doubling down on that, JP, is like what oftentimes happen as leaders. We spend so much time talking about a conversation that we're afraid to have. We talk to you, we talk to our executive coach, our mentor, our staff, until everybody's like, well, have the conversation already. And we think by voicing it, we have it, but we don't until we physically sit down and have those conversations. And so it's having them, and it's like the reps. It's no different than the player getting in the gym and shooting. The more you do it, the more comfortable you become, and the more you realize that the story that you were telling yourself is not always reality.
I really like that. It's kind of like, I've never thought of that actually, which is we have these conflicts, we have things that we know we need to do, and then we just talk to a bunch of people about what we need to do. It reminds me, and then we don't actually do anything. It reminds me of someone was telling me about some of the problem with self-help books is people read them, and they think they're actually doing the work, but they're actually just not doing it. They're just reading about the work, and they're not actually making any progress. Maybe it was James Clear that talked about that recently, but that makes a lot of sense to me. That how that would work for us psychologically, right? Is we feel like we're doing something about it by having conversations around it, but we actually aren't just taking the step. That's huge. When you going back to that thing around the time thing, a lot of people might say, okay, the time to do the things with my team, to build culture, to have the one-on-ones. But I think you were talking a lot about too, the time for yourself, the time to pause, the time to reflect, like to not have that just be an end of the season thing, which is definitely my experience as a coach. It was like an end of the season thing. Is like, okay, oh gosh, this is how far I got off target. And it's like, boy, if I had done that throughout the season. So what are some of the beliefs that get in the way for coaches on making time during season for themselves and for their team and the right things?
That's a good question, and I have a couple thoughts on that. I thought I had to do these like magical Monday PGM hour-long sessions with my team to move the needle. And then they became like draining. Like, who wants to sit for an hour after a 3-hour practice and listen to me, etc. And then it was like, do we really want to spend an hour doing that? No, we got to break the press. And so when I realized that culture, it's like I was listening to Simon Sinek, and it's like people have a gratitude journal and they write their thing they're grateful for and they check it off. But do they live a life of gratitude? Really think about that. Like, you can write down in the morning, I'm grateful, and then somebody cuts you off and you're cursing them out. And it's like, so are you really practicing gratitude? And so if you can shift as a coach to like, culture isn't the meeting, culture is the oxygen in the gym. Every moment and every interaction and every conversation, you have a chance to impact culture. It doesn't need to be a fancy PGM. Now, PGMs were great. They were like the lifeblood of my program for a long time. So there's time and space for that. But I think I put too much currency in that and not enough in the way I walked into the gym and how everybody saw me. Does that make sense?
Let me just double click on that real quick. Their culture is the oxygen in
Yeah.
the gym.
It's what they're breathing.
Yeah. And just unpack that more. Like, when you see leaders do this well, yourself or others, how are they building that culture through these little moments? Like, talk a little bit more about what that looks like.
I think like when you walk into a gym and so I was watching the Ohio State thing and it's like tough love, and you see it on the wall, but then you watch the head coach, call people up with eye contact. Maybe he's bringing them over. He's engaged in that practice. He's talking to his players by name through soundbite. He's catching good behavior. He's correcting bad behavior. He's huddling the team when they need it. He's letting them go when they don't. And you feel that in the gym. So like when you first came to observe me, it's like, is he going to feel our cultures? We were joy. We were consistency. We were growth. Could you feel that when you walk into somebody's gym? Not just when a coach is presenting on a nice video that talks about joy. Was there joy in the gym? And so that's kind of what I mean by like oxygen, and how do you create that as a daily thing that you're bringing every single day?
Yeah, we're so quick to want to like get our core values and put them on the back of a t-shirt rather than actually like make sure that they're really fully present in our heart,
Yeah.
like and in how we show up for our players every day. And just hearing you talk about that, it makes me think of how people talk about Pete Carroll, and his idea of joy and competition and just his energy. And it's just like people can feel that, and yeah, they might start as something on a wall, but that becomes like, you just keep going back to the word feel, 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 feel. That's just hitting me just across the head here. It's just like,
Can I jump in
they
for
have
a
to feel it.
second? Because
Yeah,
I
Joe,
want to
go.
tell you something. When I first got the job at App, I put Coach Summitt's definite dozen on the wall. I was coming, like some Summitt disciple. That thing's on the wall. I never talked about it. Never talked about it. Then I worked with JP during the COVID. We read the book, Pound the Stone. The leaders came up with it. And boy, did we not pound that damn stone the whole season. I have a video from we were 0-13 against this team. They beat us 13 straight times in a row. We beat them. And in the press conference, the only thing that Stanley talks about was pounding the stone. So like when I started, I thought the definite dozen on the wall was it. Make hard work your passion. I knew it because I lived it, but I wasn't breathing it for my players until I started to realize that was culture. You had to live it, breathe it every day. Are you bringing them in every day in talking about the behaviors that are necessary? And I'm passionate about it because I saw that shift in me, and my hope is to be able to inspire others to make these shifts, these small shifts in their leadership journey.
I love what you're saying, and more so how you are telling this story of what you thought was important, what would make the team successful. My version of that question, it's like, if you couldn't tell me what your team values are, what your team culture is about, how would I know as someone in the space? Like, what would I see? What are the behaviors? What words would I hear? And for me, there is this distinction between, I'm going to teach you something I know is important versus I'm creating an opportunity for you to value something that I know is important? Because those are different conversations. And in a way, this came up recently. My wife's sister was just visiting over the weekend, and we were sitting at dinner, and she's like, "Oh, there's something that we've started doing in our house, and it's a high, a low, and then something kind. So what was the high point of your day? What was the low point of your day? And then something kind, either something kind that you did for someone else or that someone did for you." And of course, immediately, I love this. Now, my daughters are 2 and 4. Lauren's son is 8, but they're talking about kindness, because it would be a very different thing for me to say to my 2 and 4-year-old, kindness is really important. It is critically important that you grow up to be a kind human. Completely different experience when even having conversations as the adults on the table. And we did ask, for input from our 2-year-old and our 4-year-old about all three, but just them having the experience of watching us talk about things that we value teaches them that they too could value those things, or at least starts to create an awareness, a perception that these things matter. And then when they choose it, that is very different than when we tell them they have to do this thing. All of that backstory to say, Angel, what are some of the conversations that you had either when you were coaching basketball or that you're having now with clients that invite them to value something that you know is important for their success?
So that's a good question. One vivid thing that comes up, and it's with a work with a coach I was doing, who wasn't was very young into the culture journey and didn't feel like could instill a lot of things with male players. And it even left me sometimes on calls like, man, I've not coached males before. Like, is he right? And start off like dripping in some stuff of, little team talks, to try to, now this is more me acting as a mentor of like, here are some things you can do. But what was great about that was I only had to provide a couple. And then I would check in. Oh no, I looked them up on my own and I thought these messages were great. And we took the model and made it their own. And then you slowly start to see like the value of it. And then fast forward, team doesn't win, but the culture was the win, because through a rough go around, the boys stayed together. And that was something that was really like the spotlight at the end of the season was like, what are you grateful for this season? And it was like the culture that I didn't know was important until I did it. Kind of like you're saying, like kindness. You could tell somebody about kindness, but they don't know about it until they experience it. And so the willingness to say, I'm going to give this thing a shot and see what happens. And it wasn't easy. There were some hard, sticky, messy, but I think that's what people need to understand. I text this to JP a couple weeks ago. The biggest thing I miss about sports is doing hard things with people. Because when you do hard things with people, pieces of you and pieces of them, you get intertwined, and that's the beauty. And so culture is not supposed to be easy. It's supposed to be sticky. And that was what transformed. And so being able to have the platform to believe so passionately in it and to give like a gentle nudge to people, they create it themselves. And then at the end, it's something that they're proud of.
There is something I want to go back to. You mentioned Pat Summitt. You coached for Pat Summitt, and I'm sure the legendary Pat Summitt. We could talk for a whole hour on stories of Pat Summitt, but this is actually how I'd like for you to share with us kind of about Pat Summitt. When you look at your coaching, what is something that Pat Summitt taught you or showed you that shows up for you as a coach, as a leader? And then how are you different? What is something unique that you said, you know what, that's not me. This is me, right? As you went on that leadership journey, because I think we are obviously our mentors, like a Pat Summitt. I'm sure she had a great impact on you, but you've done the work to go, yeah, but this is who I am. And I'm not just going to copy, my mentor.
Yeah. first thing I'll say is I've spent a lot of time recently reflecting on my time with Coach Summitt. And that was a time when the smartphone didn't exist. And I would sit at practice and I have books of notes. And I don't know why the stories are coming in so much lately. So I'm really glad that you asked about it, because one thing that I learned from her was her intuitiveness in her way that she made decisions. And I just wrote about this because so much now in coaching was data, analytics. What do the numbers say? This player should be starting. This player should be doing this. And what I loved about her, we didn't have any of that. And I'm not saying if she wasn't coaching today, she wouldn't use it, because she was all about the edge. But she would get in that huddle. She would look those players in the eye and say, what do you guys want to do here? Do we want to trap the ball screen? And they'd be like, yes. And she would like, I'm going to go with it. And the coaches would be out in the circle like, oh my God, I can't believe that she's going to let them make this decision. And I loved it because I got to be a witness to it all. And all of it was beautiful. And so she would let those guys go and they would do it. And she said, sometimes you got to give them ownership. And that's what we're talking about today, right? Getting curious, asking people what they want to do. And so when I first started on my coaching journey, I try to remain intuitive with my decision making, because at the end of the day, we coach humans, not numbers. And so there is a human element to everything that we do, in terms of how many conversations have you had with this player? Do you trust them? Do you not? Okay. And that was one of the things I relied on. Like, I had coaches all the time, script your subs. And I just went intuitively, and I stayed with that. And that was who I was. And that was something that I got to witness in Coach Summitt that I just loved. So I wanted to share that because I love the way that she did that with people all the time. And she did that with her teams. How I'm not her, God, there's so many ways I could say that. One thing that Pat was just tremendous at is, and I'll tell a personal story. I messed up like a VHS tape. So my duty.
I'm sorry, Angel. What language are you speaking? What is a VHS tape?
So Coach Summitt was VHS, and she would just want those tapes. And we were playing Chattanooga in the first round, and they had asked me to drive. First game of the season. They'd asked me to drive the night up to get the tape, because we were playing them. In the mind, I'm thinking, we're going to blow the doors off Chattanooga. Like, what do I need to do to go get this tape? So I do it. I go get the tape. I come back. Dean was waiting for me. Well, I don't put the tape in her mailbox. So the next morning, she calls me and I get it. And I'm like, I'm learning the lesson. Like, this is how we prepare. We don't take anything lightly here. I need that. You need to get me that videotape. I get it over there. I am scared the entire day because I got it. After practice, she goes, you want to come over for dinner tonight? And I was like, sure. And she never brought up that tape again. Didn't hold a grudge. She told me how she felt in the moment, got what she needed. And then that night we broke bread together. Like, that tape never happened. Like, so it wasn't like a thing that she kept dwelling on, like Angel's going to mess up the tape again. It was like, you didn't do what you needed to do. Here's why it matters to me. Get it done. End of story. Where I think sometimes when people didn't act the way that I wanted them to act, I was like, are they going to be able to do this? Because they didn't show me that they could do it right the first time. So I wish I had a little bit more of that leadership style that she had. I think that's what made her really great.
What came up for me there was just like, we got to be as leaders a little bit of a goldfish for our own people, not our own mistakes, but other people's mistakes. We got to just have that short-term memory. And she was able to do that for you.
Yeah.
What would you, if you could go back and just tell that first year head coach at App State, Angel, if you could tell your younger self there any piece of advice, what would that number one piece of advice be?
Are you going to get mad if I tell another Coach Summitt story?
No, nobody's mad. Nobody's mad.
I would say that defining what you want sometimes is equally as important as modeling what you want. And I say that because when I interviewed for Coach Summitt, she said to me, now I got to ask you a question. And I said, okay. She said, there might be a day where I come in running late. I throw you the keys to my car and I say, hey, Angel, go pick up Ty Man from school. And what are you going to say? And I was like, yes. And she was like, what if it's go get my dry cleaning? What are you going to say? And I said, yes. She was, I want you to know before anything that no job is too little or too small. And she meant that. And so when I went in there, I knew that going in. There may be days that she does it and I had to be okay with it. I was not coming in there as a coach. I had to be okay with it. But she laid that out in front. And I think for me, sometimes I would hire people, and early in my head coaching career, I'd be like, why aren't they like me? Like, why don't they work hard, or why don't they do things this way, and why don't they do things that way? Because I'm doing it. Like, I'm showing them this is how it's done. But did I ever communicate it as crystal clear as she did in that moment? And so when we communicate, I think it's just so important that you want to communicate in a way that you cannot be misunderstood instead of understood. And I wish that I had taken that approach as I hired people in to work with me, that I was so clear on what their expectations were that it was never to be like misunderstood. And I think that's something that if you had to rewind and put me back, that's the biggest thing I think I would do differently.
I really appreciate the language of that. Like, it's not just so I'm understood, but I can't be misunderstood, because it is that clear. And I know, Angel, we have overlapping basketball circles, but I coached with Heidi Vandeveer for 7 of the 10 years in college basketball. I remember when I was interning for Tara at Stanford, we went and played Tennessee at Tennessee. I met Pat Summitt. My chair on the end of the bench was in line with the baseline. Candace Parker dunked in that game from the baseline. And I was like, I know she's on the other team, but that was amazing, right? Like, there's just so much. But to the point you just made, one of the things that I so appreciated about Heidi while I was working with her, one, she was very clear. As assistants, we worked with her, not for her. And then the second thing, no job was too small. And she modeled that. And I do not think that's accidental. Like, when you talk about your experience of Pat, not just what she told you, but what she showed you, I have to believe, and I know because of the stories Heidi shared, like, that lesson was also translated. So when we talk about the ripple effect that we have as coaches, what you say is important. What you do is memorable. And that's an opportunity that every coach has to make an impact.
Mm. I love what you shared there too, Angel, because I think it is a big challenge for a lot of coaches today, whether it becomes to recruiting a player or hiring a coach. We're too busy trying to sell them on the job and tell them all the good things about the job that we forget to tell them like how hard the job is going to be. And I see this at a lot of levels now. You know, at the end of the day, college Division I to even those jobs as assistants, they're not paying crazy money. You got to have a passion and a love for it. And, you know, but we're not obviously always communicating those expectations. And I'm thinking very clearly of a coach right now that I was working with the last few weeks, and he's got this frustration of like, but I was like this, I was hungry and I would do this and this and this. And it's like, have you communicated that, you know? So much value in that, what you just shared.
Yeah, I'm telling you that's really spoke to me lately. And I think you said it best. I think it's because you need that recruit, you need that assistant. We think sometimes we need people. And I don't know if in that moment, like, obviously Pat Summitt's greatest, but her philosophy was she won with people that she surrounded herself with. And I think that she came from a place of, if you're going to be surrounded in my circle, this is who you're going to be. And it goes back to JP, some of the work we're thinking about is like, you got to know yourself to lead yourself. And at what point did I have a gap in knowing myself when I started? And so, you know, I challenge coaches today, get real crystal clear on what you know about yourself before you try to lead others. Because in that moment, you know, I thought modeling was, you know, like Betsy says, it's memorable, but I'm not communicating expectations. So then I lived with so much tension, but I wasn't comfortable enough. My spine wasn't as straight as it needed to be because it was caught up in that external. I needed this assistant or this flashy player, where Pat didn't come from a place of that. And that was just respectable. For me, that was a lesson.
Mm. Few questions here as we're kind of wrapping up our conversation today. Just one is like, your head coach, college Division One. It takes a lot of courage to step out of that. Why'd you step out of it? And then why'd you step into executive coaching?
Yeah, good question. The pivotal moment for me was we had a game against JMU, who was the number one team in the league, storied program, probably biggest win of my career, quite honestly. And I felt zero after, zero. And I remember the head coach like hugging me and bringing me in and being like, "That's a big win." And I was like, I know him. I was appreciative of it. But at that moment, I was like, I'm empty inside. Something's missing, and it's not this. And I think it was easy at the time to step away. We know the game's changing, and I had all these excuses that I would say now that look good. I don't love the way the game is going, but I respect the coaches that are there because they're leaning into it. And that wasn't the real reason. I could hide behind that, but the real reason was I had spent so much of my coaching journey thinking that my job was lead others, lead others, lead others. And I put it so far at the top and I put myself so far at the bottom that I was burnt out and I was empty. And I knew that I couldn't continue to keep doing the job at the level that the job demanded. And I didn't feel right in my heart because I knew that it was going to take a new version of me. And if I wasn't careful, I wasn't improving in the version of me, and I wasn't liking the version of me too much. So I needed to get straight on who that version of me was and recalibrate. And if it led me back there, great. If it didn't, it was meant to be, and it was the right time for me to pivot. And I think I found that once I stepped away into the executive coaching and decided, because I love leadership, I love growth, I love to learn. And when I went through the journey, I knew I had made the right decision because I had to do so much. I had to put that flashlight inside instead of putting it on Faith and all my players. The flashlight was on me. The individual improvement plan was on me. And that took a lot of work.
Let me get you out of here on this one question here, which is just, you talk about this desire to learn and grow and all these things. And you just went through your executive coaching program at Brown. I went through my program at Georgetown, so they're very similar programs. They require you to do a lot of inner work, like you said, putting the flashlight on yourself. Now that you've gone through that and now you're out there working with coaches and their teams, like, what has got you most interested? What are you most excited to be learning about? Because I know you're very intentional in your learning.
I think the performance piece, for so long, I felt like the culture was like my sweet spots where I excelled. And then once the game and competition started, it became okay. What happened to our culture? So like Shaka Smart said, there's peacetime and there's war. And during peace, I was great. I'd play for me every June, July, and August. But then there's war, and that's what coaches are heading into. And so now it's walking next to them as they step into that and help them be better based upon my own experience and based upon their own desire inside. Can I find through my conversations what's holding them back during these times and get them to peel back those layers so they can show up for their teams as their better self? But that's the passion behind what I'm doing. I love laying the foundation, but this is like in basketball, we're about to tip in a week and it's wartime. It's some people aren't happy. The playing time's being issued. What do I do? And it's like, this is great. This is why you have a coach, right? So I'm really excited about that. But also, I think I've learned so much from the business world and coaching business leaders and seeing the parallels and being able to pull from sports, pull from business, because performance is what we do. Whether it's you're coaching a basketball team, you're leading your family, you're working in a tech company. It's all the same challenges, just a different, you're just performing in a different arena.
Mm. For those leaders out there that are listening, and I'll be out first off, this has been awesome, right?
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, this has been incredible. I'm not even just like, there's not even just great notes. It's what I'm feeling right now, right? You go back to the values. I feel your energy. This has been so life-giving for me. And I actually want to leave, after I finish this recording, and I got to go show up with my values more for my family. Like, I'm just so inspired by that right now, and challenged, honestly, right? It is been a great conversation. So coaches that are feeling maybe inspired and maybe interested, like, what's the step in, it's not just like, hey, it could be as simple as just schedule a call, but like, talk us through this process of how you start to potentially contract and bring a coach on board. Like, what's that process of doing work with Angel, just so they have a better understanding of the work?
Yeah, generally, if people reach out, I schedule like a chemistry consultation call, discovery call, just to get to know them if I don't know them. Some coaches that I know, how I've approached it, that I said, when you leave, if you have something that occurs and you want to talk it through, give me a call. Because what I'm learning is a lot of people don't know what coaching is. And I think Betsy did a good job of talking about it. Sometimes they think that they want to pick up the phone and say, I'm having this issue, solve my problem. I don't want to do that. I want coaches and leaders to come to their own discovery on what they want to do with a situation. And I want to serve as a mirror. So I like to give them a coaching call, so they can feel it for themselves, so they know what it is. And so that's kind of been my approach of, maybe get to know me, let's do a coaching call. And then, is this right for you? Some people, not yet, and I don't want to be, and JP, this, because I did this. JP can say, Angel will call me when she had a problem. Like, he reminds me of myself. And so I've been very aware that as coaches, we do want to fix. And so we may want me at that time, but I want people who are truly invested, because coaching is not about, you pay money, you're investing in yourself. There's a lot of work to be done, and you got to be willing and ready to do the work. And I'm just that partner to do it with you. And so that's kind of been my approach right now. And I'm always learning and growing, and it could change, but that's been my path right now.
I'm laughing because you were talking about the Wartime, and I was thinking back to when you were in Wartime, and I'm like, I can't get through to her. I've tried this or that. Where is she? What's going on out there? I'm so, it is, you get it stuck in it. And so, exactly what I'm talking about there. But yeah, no, what you laid out there for coaches, it's a discovery call. It's getting to know each other. Then it's, hey, getting actually coached on something so coaches can understand what that experience is like. And then it's like, okay, do we want to continue this moving forward? I think that's just really important to lay out that process for coaches, because I think it is like there's a big mystery on what is coaching. But like obviously we are all coaching coaches out there. We've had some guests in the podcast that before that have taken that step, the Shaka Smarts, the Dusty Mays, these types of leaders at the collegiate level, yourself. You're making that step as well too, to get coaches out there. So it's definitely growing. And so I just appreciate you coming on here today, to share so much insight and just sharing your heart with us today. This has been one of my favorite conversations.
Yeah, likewise. Thank you, Angel. Really appreciate your insight, your time, the way that you frame things for folks, and just expanding upon the perspective of what coaching is, what it could be, and how we can support each other, whether we are actively coaching sport or have stepped into a different role that's still in the same pursuit. So thank you.
Oh, you're welcome. I enjoyed it. It was a lot of fun. I can't wait to do it again.
All right, that's it for today's episode with Angel. Huge thanks to her for coming on the podcast. This has been a long time coming. And now is like the perfect time, because she's making herself available to be out there and to coach leaders like you. So please don't just subscribe to her newsletter. I would encourage you to take that courageous, vulnerable leap and say, hey, I need some help. I need someone working with me, supporting me along the journey. and Angel has some availability, and so you can schedule a discovery call with her using the link in the details of this episode. Also, like I mentioned in last episode, highly encourage you to check out TOC Coach, our platform for coaches. That is, not just online courses, it's not just information, it's powerful transformational conversations through our live webinars, through our dashboard, through our community, and also through one-to-one coaching. Thanks again for listening to today's episode. If you found it valuable, please share it with others, leave us a 5-star review, and be sure to subscribe.